The Goat House is back with huge names that, believe it or not, could actually become trade candidates here in this offseason, mainly due to current contract situations needing big money, big extensions. We're going to break it all down with the landing spots. I'm excited for this one. Let's do it. Let's start with Dolphin star receiver Tyreek Hill. Now, there's been some rumors about this post June 1st since the Dolphins could free a lot more space. So people really shouldn't be shocked that I have him on this video. And I'm not predicting it to happen. I'm not saying the Dolphins should for sure or for sure will trade him. But if they get the right offer, I think they should consider it, given everything going on with Tyreek Hill, right? He's got 2 more years left on his deal. Does he want to be in Miami? You could debate that either way. He's talked about retiring after this contract in the past, or soon, he said. That was a couple years ago. And at the end of the year, he kind of hinted at that he wants a trade. Then he kind of went back on that. I don't want to trade. Now the way he's talking right now, throwing people under the bus, almost talking like he would, without saying it, I'd rather play, for better team, better organization, better quarterback, perhaps. I don't know. So, and he's kind of getting into some stuff off the field as well. So, and that brings his value down a little bit. The Dolphins GM said they're open to trading him if a team comes along with the first round pick and maybe more, and no teams have called. No teams have called because they don't want to trade. They won't trade that. And he's got some situations off the field here and there. So that, and again, if you trade for him, very friendly, the acquiring team, he would only cost $15 million this year. So that's great. That looks great. Next year be around, and that's give or take, be around $40 million, roughly $40 million. Now they're not locked into that, but that makes the team go, well, is he a rental? Do we want to pay him that $40 million in the second year? So do we use him for 1 year, 2 years? Does he retire early after that? Is he in trouble off the field? So the value definitely does go down. The Dolphins may not accept anything less than a first-round pick. Maybe a late first happens. I don't think so. But what his value would actually be if a trade were to happen, it would have to be a second-round pick, probably a little bit more as well. So that would be the big question. Do the Dolphins actually accept that? Looking at landing spots, I have one best fit. It is the Denver Broncos. I'm wondering how many teams would actually trade for Tyreek Hill, given his situation. Again, we just ran down the list of what's going on with his contract and off the field. Will he retire? Most teams at this time of the offseason are set. They're not looking at anybody. That's most teams. So the Cardinals could use a receiver. They could pay him. The Niners, Ricky Pearsall dealing with an injury. They lost Debo. I think Hill would be awesome in that offense. He'd probably love to be there. The Raiders. The problem with the Raiders, he's losing interest to the Dolphins. That's an explosive offense. So would he be interested playing there? Maybe he'd be interested in Las Vegas itself. They have a lot of spending money. The Commanders don't necessarily need a receiver, but that's a team that's not afraid to get better right now. They're trading left and right. They would be awesome with Tyreek Hill, right? With or without him. But the Broncos really stand out to me. They could afford him. It's a Sean Payton move to make a deal like this, to add a big-time receiver, to help Bo Nix and this offense grow even more. It's a receiver they do not have right now. It would make them that much better. If they had Tyreek Hill, they'd be an easy playoff team, like a for sure playoff team. So it is a move where Sean Payton and company, they really wouldn't worry about when he's going to retire, or they wouldn't worry about 3 years from now. They'd probably be open to paying that 2026 salary or reworking that deal a little bit. So the Broncos far and away stand out to me of a team that would do it and can do it. So again, this isn't a video. I make a lot of videos predicting trades. We get a lot right. This isn't one of those videos where this is going to happen. It's not one of those videos. It's just guys that can become candidates, and boy, those would be some candidates. So Tyreek Hill is one to watch. How about Bills star running back James Cook, who took another step up last year? He was insane last year, and he's kind of just getting going. We thought that when he was at Georgia. This guy's it's all about the upside with him. So he's just getting going. Right when the offseason started, he said he was seeking around $15 million per year. So close to around the highest paid running back, and there's still no extension. And you kind of get the feeling that the Bills are a team that just isn't going to pay a running back a lot of money. They got all their money in Josh Allen and some other pieces. They extended a bunch of key defensive players already. They don't have a lot of spending money in the future. Of course, they can afford them. They can extend James Cook, but you kind of get the feeling, they added Ray Davis looks legit. I was saying it during the year. So I think they know they got someone there, not that he's going to be James Cook or taking over for him, and they have a couple other options as well. So maybe they feel like they can just get a running back and he, can play. Maybe if he's not as good as James Cook, he can play very, very well and be a lot cheaper. So I totally could see the Bills passing up on extending Cook if he is firm on that crazy asking price, which maybe it's not too crazy. I mean, he's really, really good and a factor in all phases. So acquiring team, they would have to pay him $5.3 million this year, so very, very affordable. But he needs a pricey extension. Again, asking 15 doesn't mean he needs 15. It'll probably end up being a little bit lower than that. But again, he's just getting going. He's super, super talented. It's a little scary because his brother Dalvin Cook was like one of the best running backs in football, fell off, but he had a lot more mileage on him. Looking at in college and in the NFL, a lot more mileage, a lot more when he fell off, compared to James Cook. So I'm not really worried about James Cook on another, 4-year contract. I mean, we're running backs. I prefer 3-year, but a lot of time they get 4 years. So super talented. Was awesome this year. Second round pick and more, I think it would have to be, even though you got to trade for him and then you got to pay a running back big money. So that, I guess that drops his value down a little bit. Man, he's so good though. And he could be part of the passing game at a high level. I look at the Chicago Bears, the same teams we talk about running backs, Chicago Bears, Denver Broncos, Washington Commanders. First thought, I want to say that, the Bears are the number one team right now that everyone talks about needs a running back. The Broncos, Commanders, do they actually need a running back? People kind of debate it. The Bears could be fine with what they have, but I think everyone talks about the Bears like this is that number one team that still needs a running back. And you think about James Cook and his explosiveness, his quickness, his pass catching abilities, route running ability, his hands. Jahmyr Gibbs, like Ben Johnson, he'd be so good, and he's just getting going. It makes so much sense, but problem is the Bears did a lot of spending this offseason. They are actually in the red right now looking at the near future. So can they afford to dish out a bunch of money? They can definitely make it work. Anybody can. But does it make sense to dish out a lot of money to a running back? It could in Ben Johnson's offense, but that's a tricky part. The Broncos, they have a number of running backs. They draft R.J. Harvey. They don't have a James Cook. And Sean Payton, for him to value running back like this, it has to be a weapon. It has to be a guy that's involved in every phase of the game, and James Cook happens to be that guy. So I do love the Broncos fit as well. And the Commanders could be looking for one. Another one that would be awesome with Jaden Daniels, his pass catching ability. But the Bears, I want to say it the most sense, but then look at the cap situation, the financials. I kind of want to go Broncos. So we got to have here's a dark horse first, the Seahawks, which you may go. They have Kenneth Walker, they have Zach Charbonnet, and they drafted Damian Martinez, a steal of a pick. Yeah, that's why it's dark horse first off. But man, if I could pick one running back that would best fit their new offensive system under Clint Kubiak, I think I'd pick James Cook. He's a perfect fit in that scheme. And Kenneth Walker, expiring deal. There's been some rumors about him being traded. Charbonnet, is he the future every down number one? And Martinez, love him, but it was a 7th round pick, right? So it would take some maneuvering, move Walker, get Cook. They could afford Cook even without moving Walker. But just because of fit, I threw them in there. But I think Cook is going to need to, in his mind, in his agent's mind, is going to need to go into the season with an extension, with that security, with that insurance in case, because anything can happen with running backs. So they decline, not that he's going to, they get injured. So he wants that now. Play it safe, wants it now. So I ultimately think he will drop his asking price down to stay with an offense that he thrived in last year. I don't think he's going to drop it down significantly, but I think he'll do it to the point where the Bills go, all right, let's do it. This guy was a star for us last year, and he's ready to be even better possibly. He's just so perfect for this offense. We were so close last year. So that'll be my prediction. But because the situation right now, and the Bills might be that team to not pay a running back big money just because everything's based all around Josh Allen, his passing ability and his running ability alone. Is it worth it to pay a running back big money? And they got a guy like Ray. I think Ray Davis could be legit. I really do, based on what the small sample size, a little bit bigger than a small sample size. But basically, I think they can find someone and he can be very good. And they may already have that guy. But a name to watch here. TJ Watt. It would be something if one of the best players in the NFL got traded at this point in the offseason. I know people watching are probably like, no shot. And especially with the Steelers bringing in Aaron Rodgers finally, they're looking to contend probably. So they're going to need TJ Watt. But And again, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but there's a little bit more of a shot of this happening than people think. He needs a new contract, a new extension. I feel like he likely wants to be paid, is the highest paid defensive player in football. That makes a lot of sense. And the Steelers have offered him deals. I mean, dating back to earlier in the offseason, and I'm assuming they're not making him the highest paid, or obviously they're not giving him what he wants. And now it becomes interesting because they kind of put a timeline on it for where they want TJ Watt to decide, if he's going to accept their deal. Maybe they up that offer a little bit, but it's starting to become more interesting, and it's hard to see him anywhere else but the Steelers. But the Steelers are a very confident organization where they let guys go before their contracts are up and they find new guys. Now, replacing TJ Watt is a different story. They have the spending money of the future to afford TJ Watt, but he's in his 30s. They got to make him the highest paid defensive player in football or close. They're going to be, even though they just signed Aaron Rodgers, they're going to be on the hunt for that quarterback of the future, whether it's adding a veteran, training for a veteran next year, or making sure they're in position to draft one of these very solid quarterback prospects for the next draft. They may have to trade up to do that. So do they want to put a lot of stake into extending TJ Watt? I say most likely yes, but it's a little more interesting of a situation than you think. So if a team acquires TJ Watt, it's going to cost them just over $21 million this year. Maybe he wants a raise. That's a possibility, but the extension's going to be pricey. You have to make him the highest paid defensive player in football, or right there. I mean, he's been the best defensive player. If you combine the last 10 years of NFL, and you had to pick one defensive player, it's TJ Watt most likely. So he's deserving of a lot of money, obviously. So keep in mind, landing spots, they have to be able to afford that. Not just right now, but long term. Value's got to be a first round pick and more. I mean, he's a star player, even though he's in his 30s. I look at the Chargers right away. I could see Harbaugh and company adding TJ Watt. When they're spending money, they have a lot of spending money, but when they're spending money, I think they only spend big money if it's like a star player. So TJ Watt obviously fits that. The Commanders are still desperate for a pass rusher. They're not afraid to make this splash move. Tampa, I could see. Hassan Reddick only had a 1-year deal. Really good fit in their defense. They have some future cap. Mike Evans going to be a free agent. I actually think they're going to let, off topic, I think they might let him walk. They drafted Igbuka. They have other receivers, so they'll save money there. You can't rule out the Eagles. When a star player like this is available, really good fit. They actually have a little bit more spending money than people think. You would think they would have very, very little, given how loaded their roster is. They do a very good job. Howie Roseman, especially when it comes to players like this, they could figure out a way to add them. So I cannot rule out the Eagles. More fits, teams like the Packers could use a pass rusher. They're a little thin on future cap. The Raiders, they have a lot of other needs, but they have a lot of cap. And I mean, pairing him with Max Crosby, I think Pete Carroll would definitely be open to that idea. The Seahawks would be a fit. The Lions, much like the Packers, NFC North team that needs a pass rusher of the future, but pretty thin on future cap. So I think everybody mentions those teams when it comes to a big-time pass rusher, but can they actually afford them long-term? That is more of the question. I really like the Chargers and Commanders stand out the most, and then right after them would be the Bucs and the Eagles. But it's really hard to see the Steelers not bringing TJ Watt back, especially now that they're more of a contender with Aaron Rodgers. But that's just for this year. They're still looking out for future. Do they want to dish out the highest paid defensive player in football money to a guy in his 30s? Again, he's worth it, but it doesn't mean they could think he's worth it and not want to do it at the same time. So we'll see what happens. I think a trade a little less likely since they just signed Aaron Rodgers, but we'll see. Now, the reason Terry McLaurin is in this video, for several reasons, a big topic right now. He is voicing his opinion that the Commanders aren't really close to even showing interest to meeting his contract extension demands right now. Now that it could change, but that's interesting storyline right now. There's some rumors coming out, and I know talking about all the other guys in this video that they all have something in common. They need a contract extension. So I felt like you guys probably wanted me to talk about Terry McLaurin, but the other guys in the video, not saying they're going to get traded. And there's, even if it's a small percentage chance, I think there is a chance, there's a world where they can get traded. I don't see Terry McLaurin getting dealt. And again, for several reasons, but mainly the way I like to put it, I think it'd be pretty contradicting of the Commanders to deal Terry McLaurin based on what they did this offseason. I think it wouldn't make any sense at all. They went in on completing the offense this offseason. Completing, that's the key word there. Completing the offense this offseason. They traded a bunch of picks for Laremy Tunsil. They got to pay him a lot of money, and that is enables them to move guys around the offensive line and complete the offensive line. They trade for Deebo Samuel, so they trade a pick, lower pick, not a big deal, but it's a smaller cap hit this year, around $5 million, but they're paying a big cap hit on him next year. It's a total of over $17 million when it's all said and done over the 2 years while he's not under contract next year. So they valued him. They valued Deebo Samuel, and it kind of all of it kind of complete because they needed another receiver with Terry McLaurin. So it completes the offense. So now if you take Terry McLaurin, their best weapon, away from Jaden Daniels, it's you're going backwards, even though you spent a lot to finish the offense, and now it's not complete anymore. It wouldn't make any sense to me. Like, I would rather just take back the Deebo trade and save that $17 million and use that for Terry McLaurin. You don't need Deebo if you have Terry. You want both. That's why they did it. They didn't do it so they could have Deebo and not Terry McLaurin. It makes no sense. No sense for them to trade him. If they were in a bind when it comes to the financials right now in the future, it still wouldn't make sense, because then why did you make the deal for Deebo? But they're not. They have plenty of space, now in the future. So I'd be very, very, as you could tell, I'd be very frustrated with the Commanders. I would rip them a new one because it would make no sense. But if a team were to acquire him, it would cost them $17 million this year. He needs a pricey extension. He's a very good receiver. He finally had a quarterback, and look what he did. He is a top 10 receiver in the game, in my opinion. He's you know what you're going to get from Terry McLaurin, too. He's going to be consistent. He's a good route runner. He can align anywhere. He's got good hands, can track the ball. There really isn't going to be surprises with him. He's a very good character, to a very, very, very likable guy. Like, what you're going to get. A good football player, a good person with Terry McLaurin. So that keeps his value up as well. I think he's worth the first-round pick. Maybe it's I don't think a trade's going to happen, but maybe it's a second, 2 seconds, a third. I don't know. But I don't see a trade happening, so I'm not even going to bother. It wouldn't make any sense. And maybe it does happen, and I'm just going to be surprised, and I'm going to rip the Commanders. I think they'll eventually – I think McLaurin kind of has some leverage because he knows the Commanders, they don't want to get worse right now. Well, the defense almost – they got to figure that out. But the offense, they don't want to take a step backwards. Like, after they are trying to take steps forward, it would make no sense. Like, this is their best offensive player outside of Jaden Daniels, their prized possession quarterback, right? And Laremy Tunsil's up there for them, but this is their best weapon. Hands down. And he was showing it in some big games down the stretch as well in the playoffs. They need him. You don't want to go like, what if we had more seasons with McLaurin and Jaden Daniels? It was special in the one season. It's just not going to happen. So McLaurin has some leverage. I hope he gets paid a lot of money. He should be. What did T. Higgins get? I think he could beat that, really, which is a lot of money. And maybe they wish they spent a little bit less on the Deebo or a different option. But they're not locked in with him long term, and they're going to be paying cap hits for some years on him, even though it's a 1-year deal. But you don't get him to replace McLaurin. You get him to pair with McLaurin. So it would be head scratching. And maybe you could argue that for some of these other guys, like Steelers trading TJ Watt. It'd be a little head scratching when they're trying to contend right now, but you can kind of argue it. Do they want to pay him that much money on in his 30s now, starting a new contract? We'll see. But Terry McLaurin, people are talking. I don't know. I wouldn't look too much into that one. Kyle Pitts, a little bit different than the other names on this video. Those other guys are pretty much stars or superstars. He's not. He was a superstar prospect. He's supposed to be a star player, and maybe if he just gets a change of scenery, maybe he could be that. The skill set is there. He needs to catch the ball a little more consistently, but if a team were to acquire him, he would cost $10.8 million this year, so affordable. It's a little pricey for a tight end. It's been a little underwhelming, but very affordable. He's on an expiring deal. You don't need to give him, like these other guys we talked about, it doesn't really feel like you need to give him an extension ASAP. He's not demanding it. You could, though. You definitely could. It honestly could be better to do it now while, in case he plays like he's supposed to play, then he's going to cost a little bit more. So a team could trade for him. I just thought of that. A team could trade for him, and he might be somewhat of a steal on an extension right now, unless he continues to be disappointing. It sounds like the Falcons are requesting, if, there's actually been trade calls, but if he is going to be traded from the Falcons, they would need a day 2 pick. he doesn't really feel worth the 3rd round pick right now because he's been super underwhelming. He's on an expiring deal, and he's a little pricey for a tight end this year. So to me, he kind of feels like a 4th and a something else, but it's not worth it for the Falcons. It's not going to happen at that point. So 3rd round pick, I'd say it's a 3rd, and maybe the Falcons give up like a 6th or something. Maybe at that point they would rather keep him and see how he can do a full year at Michael Penix. That's definitely a possibility. So look at the Steelers with Arthur Smith there, and they're looking for another playmaker. I think specifically they're looking for a tight end that's kind of like a hybrid that can play almost as a receiver, move tight end. They're looking at Jonnu Smith, who also played for Arthur Smith with the Falcons in the past. But Kyle Pitts, I could definitely see the Steelers being interested. The Chargers, Greg Roman's offense, I think with Justin Herbert, I think this guy could get on track to where he's supposed to be. As long as he catches the ball a little more consistently. Love that fit. Love it. I look at the Steelers and the Chargers the most when it comes to Kyle Pitts. And I put the Ravens on here. I was going to put them under like more fits or wild card because at first glance, it's like Ravens don't have a ton of spending money. They have a little bit. They have Mark Andrews. They have Isaiah Likely. And they have Charlie Kolar as well. This is kind of like he fits under the likely category, I guess. But, I mean, Andrews always was, even coming out of Oklahoma, he was like, is he more of a receiver? But they were kind of looking to trade Andrews at one point. I think they ultimately keep him. But if they have something lined up, or even if they don't, expiring deal, Likely's going to need a new contract at some point. The Ravens love their tight ends. Pitts could rotate in with those guys right now. And they could use them long term and let Mark Andrews walk. And it's kind of a Ravens move to trade for. They trade a bit, but they only trade for guys on expiring deals. It feels like he's on an expiring deal. Others, the Eagles could be looking for a tight end in the future. They're not afraid to make that move. The Giants could use an upgrade perhaps or another one. The Cowboys, Ferguson dealing with some injuries last year and on an expiring deal, but those are more wild card fits there. Really like the Steelers and the Chargers the most, but the Ravens, I could argue that one they're a little sneaky there for a guy like Kyle Pitts. We'll see if the Falcons decide to trade him. It's all going to come down to what teams are they willing to give up that day 2 pick. Check out other trade videos. We also have videos covering the free agents that are shockingly still available with fits. There's 2 videos like that. Starting to rank players for the upcoming season. So check all those out. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on. That'll do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.